Well, Brian Harsin at Auburn has the Rona. We've got QBs being named as starters, not being named as starters. We got QBs who don't even play in the SEC anymore, and there's controversy running amok. Plus, we've got our top 5 SEC games for the year because, heck, it's like the college football Christmas Eve. Games start in less than a week. Well, I guess this weekend for some, but SEC games start Thursday night with Tennessee against Bowling Green. This is the third Saturday in October, your SEC tailgate podcast for the rest of us. Find us online at thirdsaturdayinoctober.com. You can find links to all of our social media pages, find our tailgating tips. I am Tennessee Bradley. With me today again is Alabama Chris. Chris, how you doing?
Man, I am pumped. We're so close to the beginning of the season, man. Although when I look outside, I see that it is still summer is raging out there. It's currently the mid 90s. I'm sure between now and opening day or the start of the season, we're going to have some 100-degree triple digits there, but I don't care. It already is fall in my mind. So I am excited to keep that mindset going until it actually feels like that outside. I'm just going to live in that mindset in my brain.
Yeah, well, we've got a lot to cover today because we are ever so close to kickoff. So this is the tailgate part of the season. It's right before kickoff. We're just hanging out. So let's get started. First, in Auburn, news broke this week that Brian Harsin has the Rona. He has COVID-19. And I think this just kind of started a firestorm on Auburn Twitter because from what I understand, he hasn't really been pushing vaccines for his team. I don't know that he's gotten one, but the Auburn fans are like, okay, now this is bitten you in the butt and this may be costing our team something. Chris, you live with Auburn fans. You married into an Auburn family. Have you gotten any insight from the Auburn side of how they're feeling about this?
Other than a couple of people that I've talked to just being angry that Auburn is in the news again for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
According to those people, it's like, why can't we just get down to some football? I want to, we as Auburn fans want to stop being compared to the guys across the state in Tuscaloosa. We want to stop being middle of the pack SEC West Division team, and we don't want to be known in this time frame as dealing with coronavirus versus just getting ready to play our opening game. So yeah, and again, I have really grown to like Brian Harsin as a coach. Yeah. And as a person, it sounds like he's saying all the right things. That was just my perception, though. In this last couple of days with news of him having the coronavirus, there have been a lot of naysayers coming out about why he is doing the exact opposite of what he needs to be doing with all of this. It's distracting in a bad way. And I don't necessarily disagree that it is distracting in a bad way. I don't know that I would go so far as I've seen a couple of articles written as what is Coach Harsin thinking, and is he even the right person for the job? It seems like it's going a little extreme, but again, this is SEC football, so it's prone to extreme viewpoints.
Yeah, I mean, you haven't even coached a game, and your fans are second guessing. Are you
already calling for your head?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Tennessee did that, and the coach wasn't even fully hired, and was able to get him fired. So I don't know. There's some ties between Tennessee and Auburn, an old rivalry, and I think those ties, for some reason, those ties, just where the two programs are, just trying to claw their way with. I mean, Auburn's biggest rival is Alabama. One of Tennessee's top 3 rivals is Alabama. I don't know where it floats because Tennessee's really not beaten Tennessee, Georgia, or Florida, but a couple of times in the last long time. So
yeah,
The distraction part is what I was seeing a lot of. This is an unneeded distraction right before the season starts. I'd have to say, if I was an Auburn fan, I'd be pretty upset too. Head coach coming down with COVID right before kickoff. We'll see. Along those same lines, just getting prepared for the season, welcoming fans into the stadium. LSU has said everybody who comes to Death Valley must either be vaccinated or have a negative COVID test within 72 hours of, I guess, kickoff or the event. So they are taking things very seriously. On the flip side, Neyland Stadium, Tennessee, has said you don't have to mask, whether you're vaccinated or not vaccinated. You don't have to take a test. You don't have to be vaccinated. Just show up. This might be a good test case if they stick with those guidelines the whole season. So LSU on one side, Tennessee on the far other. We'll see.
Yeah, and as much as I don't want our tailgate chats to become places of political conversation, at least for the purposes of just having fun and talking about college football, it is interesting, looking at a map currently of like hospitals and their ICU beds or beds availability. It's essentially like the whole country is needing to pay attention to this right now. But when they color code them to see which is more severe, it's like the entire SEC is the most severe just at a glance, looking at that. And so it's definitely a hot button topic nationwide. I mean, like it feels like we're going to possibly have another civil war based on if you want to put a mask on or not. But it is definitely one of those things to where it sounds like what some of these people are saying, maybe not the Vols, but some of these teams or schools are saying, like, if you want to come enjoy football, you can do it as long as you get that shot or as long as you can prove you've been vaccinated. So definitely there will be political statements made, and I won't make that myself. I'll let everybody else talk about it because it seems like that no one is at loss for words when it comes to all this stuff. But I'm just ready to enjoy football. I'm sad to, again, I'm glad that we're at this place where we're talking about the pandemic, COVID, coronavirus, all of this stuff to a degree. At least this comparing this year with last year, it's a bit like last year was the COVID talk. This year, we're talking more about NIL and expanding the playoffs. And it's something other than, are we even going to have a season, which that feels nice. Yeah. But we're far from through this instance. So I hope that everybody remains safe, stay safe, go do what you need to do so you can go tailgate for your respective team and just enjoy the season. I would hope that this is a place or a time of the year where we can really just appreciate the fact that we're finally playing college football again. And it doesn't matter if the person you're sitting next to has a mask on or not, but we can just all enjoy it together. So whatever we have to do, I just want some good football. I just want to start watching football and forget about all this political stuff that's being made out of whether you've had a shot or whether you wear a mask or not.
Yeah, exactly. And on top of that, the SEC came out and said, look, if you have, we're not rescheduling games for not being able to dress enough players for COVID reasons. So if you can't play the game, I don't know if it's going to be a forfeit or a no contest. But there's even the possibility a school may be fined for a forfeit for not dressing enough players, which, I mean, this is the SEC. It just means more money, more money that you make off of NIL, more money you make off of the SEC network, TV deals, endorsements, all that. But it also means more money that you have to pay if you can't dress enough players. Very interesting. I think the commissioner, and I mean, obviously there has to be buy-in from most of the schools as well. So a lot of these athletic directors or college university presidents are all in on this. So I don't know. We'll see how this all shakes out.
Yeah, I think that you're exactly right. It seems like less than this being a political statement, or the way that Greg Sankey or the heads of the SEC can assert their will, it does sound more of a financial thing. So this is less political, more financial. Hey, you said you're going to be playing on this day. If there wasn't a global pandemic going on, you would be playing that. And so if you can't get your players or your team ready to be competitive for that Saturday's game or whenever it is, then maybe you should be fined and not us having to take the brunt, the SEC as a whole taking the brunt for you not being able to do it. So, yeah, I think that you're exactly right. Follow the money and you'll find out the motivation.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think they trust vaccines. They trust the protocols that the teams are going through on top of vaccines to help keep everybody safe.
Yeah, and we're seeing that actually in the NFL to a degree too. That as person to person, there is a difference. And if you get COVID because you're unvaccinated, you have a fine. I think there's a fine at first, and then maybe you lose your pay for one game. And if you get then in the third thing, it's like a 4-game suspension.
Wow.
And so first slap on the wrist is a monetary fine. Second is, I guess, monetary plus you have to sit out a game. You have a third strike against you. You have to be sidelined for 4 games. And then even on top of that, though, that I have heard of a person who was vaccinated. Like, I think that Ryan Tannehill currently was vaccinated, but currently now has COVID. But because he was first vaccinated, he's not necessarily prone to those 3 strikes you're out sort of thing that some of the other players that are unvaccinated. So again, personal responsibility, team cohesiveness is a big part of it, whether the NFL or college football. But yeah, definitely it seems different this year. Commissioner Sankey and the SEC are playing a little bit less from behind. Like last year, it's just like, oh well, we'll try to reschedule that game. And some games got rescheduled, being canceled due to COVID. Other games didn't, depending on how close it was or the playoff implications, those types of things. But This year, it sounds like they're being a bit more proactive and saying that, hey, if you your bottom line is going to be affected if you can't get your team in line.
Yeah. Well, I know, going back to the Titans, Coach Vrabel tested positive for COVID, so he's going through protocol as well.
Yep.
And you brought up Ryan Tannehill. Not necessarily that I want to talk about him, but the quarterback position in NFL quarterbacks. So Tua played, and I'll just leave it at Tua. Tua played quarterback at Alabama a couple of seasons ago.
Yeah.
He is still stirring up controversy. Not his fault. He didn't do it. But how do you pronounce the man's last name is a bit of a controversial subject. I mean, I don't know why it is, but it is, right?
Yeah. How do you say it? And recently, 2 ESPN analysts, Adam Schefter and Field Yates, both got letters sent to them by a person who claims to be a retired radio and TV announcer, a voice or a commercial voice, and then a voiceover artist. So this person was like, hey, I'm tired of hearing how you're mispronouncing Tua's last name. So here is how it's pronounced. And he goes in his letter, and this is some vitriol in there. There's several curse words in there. I will leave all of that out and just say that he said that you regularly and routinely mess up. That I'm changing the words there. Up the name of the Miami quarterback. His name is Tua Tagovailoa. You two blank people regularly and continuously mispronounce it, and you say Tango Vailoa. And so he was like, say it right. I'm tired of listening to you. And so Adam Schefter put that on, put the whole letter on Twitter as like, man, this is a high point in my career when I've been thoroughly dressed down by this person who goes unnamed, even though they do sign the letter, although you can't read the signature.
He can't read signatures. No.
Right. So he goes on, he tells you how to pronounce Tua's name. Although a few things down from that actual letter that Adam Schefter put on his Twitter feed, you actually hear Tua when he was probably a freshman, or maybe he wasn't even on campus yet. So this is early days of being an Alabama commit, telling the press how to pronounce his name. And you know what? It's the way that this other guy says is mispronouncing it. So Tua apparently according to a professional retired radio and TV announcer, has been saying his name wrong all of this time.
Well, and we'll go back to not last season, but 2 seasons ago. We interviewed John Gromos, who was a radio broadcaster for Vanderbilt, and he talks about professional announcers like this. They practice the names. I'm sure. Look, there are times that I've practiced names and then come on the podcast and I'm just going to butcher them. That happens too. But there's also something to be said about practicing them, reviewing them. I know these guys did that. So I don't know. You get this press stuff from the teams anyways, saying, hey, here's the name and here's how it's pronounced. A lot of times those guys are writing it phonetically on their notes so that they don't mess it up on the air. But I don't know. It's just funny that it's still something that's being brought up.
Yeah. How do you say the last name? Just off the cuff. Go for it.
I mean, I think it's, I have to read it, but I think it's just Tagovailoa.
Yeah. Okay. See, I put the N in there. I say Tagovailoa.
Yeah.
But you know what? Saying it quickly, I feel like covers a multitude of sins because Tagovailoa is like, what did you put an N in there? It's like, I don't know. Did I? Maybe it's a mystery.
With my allergies, most of the time I sound congested. I probably sound a little congested now because I always am just a little bit. I introduce myself as Bradley, and half the time it sounds like Brandon because the congestion just throws an N in there, and I don't know. But but so let's get to current SEC QBs.
I guess we don't have to talk about people that have been in the NFL for multiple seasons at this point.
Yeah. So, but we'll come back to NFL quarterbacks or former NFL quarterbacks in just a second. But first, A&M has named a starter. Hayes King is going to be the starter at quarterback for Texas A&M. Kellen Mond had been the starter for 3 or 4 years. Seems like he'd been there a long time. Yeah. And so now it's uncharted territory when you're naming a new starter for the first time in 3 or 4 years. I
believe this will be the first time that Jimbo Fisher has to name a starter, because I think that Kellen Mond was actually, as a freshman, the starter, if I'm remembering correctly. And then I think that then Jimbo Fisher came in the next year, I think Kellen Mond's actual sophomore year, and he was kind of the presumptive starter from then on. So this is the first time that Jimbo Fisher is even having to deal with that.
Yeah. So we'll see. I've got high hopes for Texas A&M this year. Mm-hmm. We'll see what they can do. Then over at Tennessee, we still have no starter publicly named. However, we've got a couple things. One, Brian Maurer has entered the transfer portal. He played a little bit last year, a little bit the year before, had some concussion issues, other injuries. Our line couldn't keep him clean. Whether that's his fault for hanging onto the ball too long, trying to run, or our offensive line not being able to block, whatever. He just couldn't stay clean. So he obviously knew that he wasn't, in the top 2, maybe top 3. So he's entered the transfer portal. So that leaves Harrison Bailey, the freshman from last year, who started the last couple games. So Harrison Bailey, Joe Milton, transfer in, and Hendon Hooker, also a transfer coming into Tennessee. And though Josh Heupel hasn't publicly announced a starter, Peyton Manning, in an interview this week, had said that he knew who the starter was. Now, there are a couple of different things that could be going on here. Peyton could have been joking. It could have been that Coach Heupel said, hey, the quarterback who does X, Y, and Z is going to be the starter. And so Peyton's like, yeah, I know who the starter is going to be. It's going to be the one who does X, Y, and Z. Or Coach Heupel could have a starter in mind. He told Peyton Manning, and Peyton Manning knows a name. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I know that come Thursday night we'll have a starter. And here's the thing: we play a couple of warm-up games before we get into SEC play. So I'd be okay if and let me double check the schedule, but I think we've got Bowling Green, then Pitt, then Tennessee Tech. So we've got 3 warm-up games. If we've got 3 quarterbacks that we're trying to decide which one is going to be the starter, start one against Bowling Green, start one against Pitt, start one against Tennessee Tech. See how they let them play a half. And it's not necessarily about who goes and throws the most touchdowns. It's about who execute, who adjusts the offense. Just let them play a half. The second half, I don't know, mix match, do whatever.
Yeah.
But I think you got some time to figure it out.
Yes. With that, though, I mean, I love the idea that Tennessee has Bowling Green and then Pitt and then Tennessee Tech as their first 3 games. They can almost use it kind of like the NFL uses their preseason to use it as actual in-game tryouts to see how they are going to respond under pressure and all of that. And, that is one of the benefits of these some of these games at the beginning of the season that many people say are cupcake games. It allows you and your team to get settled in game time situations so that when the big games start, then you can really perform at a higher level. Some of those, like Georgia is about to play Clemson, so they won't get that benefit. But it's nice that Tennessee does have the opportunity. And again, as Coach Saban would say, that every team has to be looked at, and no team is a cupcake. We have to go out and do our process regardless.
With Pitt, I don't know how good they are. I know nothing about Pitt other than it's going to be the Johnny Majors Classic, because Johnny Majors won a national championship at Pitt, and then the next year left to come back to his alma mater, Tennessee, and coach there, and rebuild a program, which he did. And then he, at the end of his tenure, it gets handed over to Philip Fulmer. We know what Fulmer does in 1998. It feels like 98 again in Knoxville. And I don't mean 1998. I mean, it's just 98 degrees in Knoxville. But, yes, we've got some games that don't matter as much. Do we need to win against Pitt? Yes, because if we don't win against Pitt, we may not get a bowl bid. Tennessee's kind of on that verge of 6-6 this year. Thanks to 4 non-conference games against easier opponents. So I guess now it's time to open presents. I
like that. Yes. I love this Christmas Eve theming because it's perfect. Because it's almost here.
Yeah. So let's just go back and forth. Top 5 games. We'll each kind of come up with our top 5 SEC games. So these are games that an SEC team is playing in. It doesn't necessarily have to be 2 SEC teams. What are your top 5 for this season? And just because I don't want you to steal it, I'm going to go first. I'm going to say week 1, Georgia Clemson.
Yep. Okay. So I knew that we were going to have some
game.
Yeah. We're going to have some ties, but this could be one of those, every year there's a game of the century, even though it's just a game of the year, or maybe even just a game of the week, if that, because there's a lot of fun games that are going to be played on that first week. But it is hard to argue against Clemson versus Georgia, 2 teams that are starting out in the top 5, regardless of what poll that you're looking at. And I mean, I think that for the losing team, there is the benefit of the fact that they play that very meaningful game, the very first game. So then they have the entire rest of the season to make their case to try to get back into the 4-team playoff. But for that winning team, man, doesn't it feel good that in just a couple of days, they're going to know who the victor is between those 2 top 5 teams, both teams that have some question marks, with everything that Trevor Lawrence has brought to Clemson over the last handful of years. He's now not there. And so now we've got a new starting quarterback, a quarterback that saw some playing time last year, And I can't even pronounce it. I'm trying here. Ugalolele. Oh, well, it's kind of like Tagovailoa. I don't want to mispronounce it, but I don't know if I'm saying it right, so I just say it fast. But anyway, maybe an unproven starter, even though he has done some good things for Clemson. And then we got Georgia, who, man, I mean, this could be the season for them if they play their cards right. So I agree. I was hoping to have 5 different top 5 games, but man, it's hard to argue, especially early in the season. This is not a game to everybody to star on their calendar.
Yeah. So Chris, what's your next top 5 game? Just, and these are in no particular order, but what's another game that you're keying in on this year?
Okay, so I was trying not to look at Alabama at all in this because I talk about Alabama so much, and to try to not sound like just a homer, I wasn't going to do Alabama, and I was really excited that I was going to go to the SEC East and talk about a game that's not even a interdivisional or SEC game, and Georgia and Clemson. But yeah, I can't deny that was good. So now just looking across the calendar, the next game for me is October 9th when Texas A&M plays Alabama, or Alabama plays at Texas A&M at Kyle Field there. I think that is also going to be one of those early, or at least first half of the season, tell us what the West is going to shape up to look like. Because for right now, I think both of us have our presumptive way that the season will end up. Well, Alabama will be first in the West, followed by Texas A&M, and then I think we both had LSU at third. No, you had them a little further down than that.
I don't trust LSU just yet.
Yeah, so I feel like that is going to be an early, or at least first half of the season tell to who's going to be in Atlanta in December for the SEC championship. I just think that game has got too many possible playoff issues there, if not full college football playoff implications.
Yeah. No, so it's funny. You tried to stay away from Alabama games, but couldn't. I looked at Tennessee's schedule and I was like, I'm not looking forward to any of these games. But I am looking forward to Alabama at Florida. In the swamp. But also Florida's been playing with a chip on their shoulder and not been able to quite get there. Whether it's stumbling against LSU late, just not being able to beat out Georgia in the East for that first spot. But now Florida's got a chance to go up against the big boys of the SEC and prove themselves in a regular season game. So stakes are high, but it's not a winner take all, go to the SEC championship game or the pressure of the SEC championship game. It's just a regular season game. So I'm looking forward to Alabama at Florida.
No, I completely agree. That game is going to be one of those that, like, Florida has complained for the last couple of years of, like, okay, we certainly, Alabama and Georgia, their reputation and their win-loss record speaks for itself. But hey, why aren't you talking more about Florida? And so this is that opportunity for, at least for the last handful of years, the kind of, when we just look at who is in the East, we look and kind of see Georgia number 1 and Florida number 2 for the most part, for them to make a case of why they should be in that argument for being one of the top, if not the top 2 teams in the conference. So I completely agree with that. Yeah. My next choice is having to deal with Florida as well. But when they then go to Georgia and play them, what day is that? On day before Halloween, October 30th, they will face off. Again, I think much like this Texas A&M Alabama game, that this will kind of speak to who reigns supreme in the East before the East is actually decided. So there will still be a month left to play after this game will have been decided. But I think that think about Georgia. Their schedule is pretty rough this year. They've got Georgia as their first game, and then they also play Florida, who is one of the tops as well. Those are 2 difficult games, and then they have to get through that to make it to the SEC championship. So it looks like a difficult one. But yeah, Florida, or when Georgia plays Florida on October the 30th, I've got that one down as my number 3 game of the year.
Yeah. Well, world's largest outdoor cocktail party is always a fun one. No love lost there. Often no punches held either. My next one is not an SEC rivalry game, though it could be Arkansas versus Texas.
Ooh.
I like this because I like what Sam Pittman's doing at Arkansas. We get to see how Texas stacks up against what we believe to be lesser SEC strength. But yeah, this is a good test to see where Texas fits in, especially if Arkansas and Texas end up in a West division together.
Yeah, exactly.
Or possibly a pod together. We'll see how all that shakes out. But Arkansas versus Texas, really intrigued by this one.
Yeah, it's like the start of the rivalry the year before, or maybe a couple of years, depending on when they actually let Texas and Oklahoma in, or to start actually playing games that way. But this will be a rivalry. Again, like you're saying, when I'm thinking of pods, I think, again, this is just me armchair quarterbacking the idea that I think that Arkansas seems to Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and Texas should be the four in that like far west pod. Yeah. But even if they're not, just like if you're trying to divide them up just geographically, Arkansas and Texas should be playing each other every year because they're in that far west side of the SEC West. So I think this is going to be the start of a fun SEC West or far west pod rivalry.
Yeah, this is when the Texas Oklahoma joining the SEC talk gets fun, because though we don't get to see them against all the SEC competition this year, we do get a sweet preview.
We do get a preview.
Yeah. Exactly. So Chris, where are you going next on your calendar?
My last two games are the last, or both on the last week of regular season play. And so for me, my game before last is LSU versus Texas A&M at LSU, or in Death Valley. I just think that, again, it's the last game of the season for them, and could possibly determine who of Texas A&M or LSU goes on to either vie for that top spot in the West or determines who's going to the SEC championship. That could be that last game of the season. That's going to be very exciting. And all eyes will be on Texas A&M and LSU in that game if Alabama has a slip up in this season, which there is the possibility of it this year, especially, going back to some of that quarterback talk from earlier. Nick Saban has had a lot of good things to say about Bryce Young and say he's progressing in a way. I often sometimes get scared when I hear Nick Saban give somebody a compliment, because I'm wondering, do they need that compliment to then increase their confidence? Or is he just giving them a compliment? So I'm always looking at the in between the lines of what Coach Saban is saying. But if Bryce Young...
Do they need encouragement, or did he just jinx his quarterback? You never know.
Exactly. So if Alabama does slip up, I think that Texas A&M Florida game is possibly the SEC West game of the year. They're coming up at the end. What about you?
Did you say Texas A&M Florida?
I don't know why I said that. What I meant was Texas A&M LSU.
Gotcha. Well, the West, it's just so much fun because I don't know. I feel like the middle of the pack is stronger and bigger than in the East, but maybe that's just my East bias and thinking Tennessee's terrible. So I've got, and none of these are at the end of the season because I'm just jumping around the calendar, but I've got 3 more left. So maybe I'll have to throw in 2 at the end. But speaking of LSU going to UCLA.
Oh, yeah.
Because, UCLA, I haven't heard a lot of news about them, so I don't think they're exactly, tier 1 football program right now. But also, I'm just intrigued about what LSU is going to look like this year.
Yeah.
So this is an early matchup against, I wouldn't think a cupcake team,
Yeah.
Maybe not even a Miami, but I don't know. So I'm just interested to see how LSU does, especially on the road, all the way across the country against UCLA.
Yeah, and especially being played so early in the season, that being their first game. And who is it? I'm trying to think. Is it Brian Kelly? Now, who is the head coach at UCLA?
No, because Brian Kelly's at Notre Dame.
Notre Dame. Shoot, not Chip Kelly. I feel like that. I forget who it is. It's not. Dang. It's not coming to the forefront of my brain. But whoever that UCLA head coach is, I think is on the hot seat this year. And so they need an early win. And
it is Chip Kelly, who was previously at the Philadelphia Eagles. Before that, he was at Oregon.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that he's kind of on the hot seat this year, which is to a degree every UCLA coach that they've had there for the last 20 years or so finds himself in the hot seat because they've got UCLA across town. That
USC,
especially. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore, man. USC,
all these letters, it's just
yeah, I get lost. But yeah, because especially in the 2000s, USC was so dominant that UCLA was, playing second fiddle. But historically, in my mind, I think of UCLA Bruins as being the more decorated team coming out of Los Angeles. Yeah. But regardless, I think that Chip Kelly and the UCLA Bruins have a lot to prove that first out of the gate game. So I like that for one of the ones that you're watching there.
So yeah. So what's number 4 or number 4 on your list?
Yeah, I've got this one is my number 5. So the Georgia Clemson game and the Texas A&M Alabama game, Florida Georgia, Texas A&M LSU is number 4, and then my final for the 5 that I put with here is, even though I grew up looking down at this state for its football prowess, Mississippi has become my favorite state to watch, especially in the SEC when it comes to it. And it comes down to really Lane Kiffin and Mike Leach just being a joy to watch, because they are going to go outside of the box. They're going to say what they think. They're going to have some humor behind it. I cannot wait for that. The last game of their season when UCLA, when Ole Miss takes on Mississippi State. I'm pumped about this game because I feel like both of those teams have a lot of fun. That Egg Bowl will determine who reigns supreme in the state of Mississippi, and I just get to hear Mike Leach and Lane Kiffin, make some offhanded Twitter remarks, if nothing else, if not joking straight up face to face. I love the state of Mississippi, and the Egg Bowl this year is just going to be a joy to watch. So that's my number 5 that I came up with. I'm so stoked for November 27th for several reasons, but not the least of which is the Egg Bowl.
So I think there needs to be a press conference where Lane Kiffin and Mike Leach sit there and drink hottie toddies out of cowbells. Man, just saying.
Yes. See, that's the state of Mississippi version of roll balls, like we say here on the show. I love that. Drinking hot toddies or hottie toddies out of cowbells. That's perfect.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and mention both of these. Ole Miss does make one of my top 5. Ole Miss versus Liberty, because you got Hugh Freeze coming back to Ole Miss.
The Freeze Bowl.
And I mean, as much as Lane Kiffin did not do good things for Tennessee when he left, I like him better than Hugh Freeze. Not necessarily that he does less in the violations area, NCAA sanctions, but I don't know. I do think that Lane Kiffin is the superior coach right now. And then finally, the Brain Bowl, Vandy versus Stanford.
Yeah.
Stanford can find ways to win, maybe not consistently. It is the Pac-12, but they get good players. Vanderbilt hadn't figured out that formula just yet. Maybe it's the difference in emphasis on academics out west, in the Stanford kind of recruiting area versus the South. I don't know. but I think that's going to be a fun one to watch. And Chris, we haven't done this all preseason because there's been no football to watch. Next week, when our show releases, we will have one SEC game in the bag. And so we've got to bring it back for the first time this season. It's time to pregame.
Pregame!
Tailgate, man cave, living room, pregame, burgers, ribs, chicken wings, chip and dip, pregame, scotch and a lot of IPA, Coca-Cola, pregame, slaying dogs, EA, cornhole, pregame. How you gonna watch?
So Chris, I'm excited. Thursday night, Tennessee takes on Bowling Green. I hope it's a blowout. I want to see Josh Heupel's offense just put up 100 points. I don't care if we let 70 points score as long as we score more than Bowling Green. Although word that I'm kind of getting, I've not seen any camps, and yes, it's, orange on white, Tennessee playing Tennessee. Apparently the defense is looking better than I guess the coaches expected, but
good.
I want to see this offense. I'm curious about what this defense looks like after losing a lot of just leadership, if nothing else. But I'm going to be tuning in at home where I like watching football because the food is cheap and the bathroom line is short. But Chris, we've got some games starting this weekend. We've got Thursday night. We'll have Friday night games. We'll have Saturday games after our next episode. Are you going to be watching football between now and next week?
Oh yeah, I have been. Again, I like the NFL. I'm not near the NFL fan that I am the college football fan, especially the SEC. But I've been watching so much NFL preseason action, talking heads talking about practices of SEC schools and NFL. Like, I've been watching a lot of football. I've been watching Hard Knocks on HBO, getting primed and ready. I'm just ready for somebody to kick the ball and the clock start ticking down in regular season play. That is all I'm looking forward to. So absolutely, I'm going to be watching your Volunteers destroy Bowling Green next week. So I am pumped. Do you have an early thought about score, spread, any of that stuff at this stage in the game?
Realistically, with this offense, I would love to see them go out and execute and score 40 points. Mm-hmm. I think if Tennessee wants to win this year against SEC play, knowing that defense is more of a question mark, they're going to have to score points. And if they can go out and execute in the first game, score 40 points against Bowling Green, I'm going to feel like we can get to 6-6.
Sure.
So I've got no idea. I mean, I know where Bowling Green is. I think we play them every couple of years just because they're a local team. But I don't know, like 42-20.
Okay.
I still think they score some points. I really hope it's not even that close, but
yeah,
we'll go with 42-20.
I was thinking right in that same area. I think that, working out some of the kinks, trying to figure out where your team is, looking forward to the rest of the season, maybe a little bit more than that one game, even though coaches never like to admit that. And players never say that because they're not allowed to. But I was thinking something similar to that. Like, I was thinking like 38-10.
Yeah,
38-14, maybe if the Bowling Green can get into the end zone twice, but somewhere around in that is where I was thinking too. So not too far off from what you were thinking.
Well, I love it. So let us know what you think too. You can find us on social media. You can find our social media profiles by going to thirdsaturdayiNoctober.com. There you can get our tailgating tips. You can also sign up for our Pick'em League. It's coming back. We've done it a couple different ways. We're still kind of working out the kinks, how we're going to do it, but we're going to do it anyways. So sign up at thirdsaturdayiNoctober.com. It's Christmas Eve. I can't wait for next Thursday to open the present of Tennessee's 2021 football season. Bring on the sanctions, bring on the losses. Let's just play football. I am
Heck,
ready, and let's roll Vols.
Oh, I am ready too, brother. We are so close to watching actual regular season SEC football. I am pumped, and roll balls right back at you, brother. Can't wait until next time.